Welcome to Fabricadabra Embroidery Edition. Today we're going to be working the fly leaf, and fishbone stitches. We're going to start with the fly stitch. You can see I've drawn a few lines that is going to help me visually as a visual guide. I'm coming up from the back, and then I'm going at a point that's a little bit above the end of that line or the beginning of that line. Then I'm going to go down on the opposite side from that first point, and then I'm going to pull my floss through until there's a little loop. Okay, and then I'm going to bring my needle up through the tip of that line, okay, from the back. And then I'm going to pull that through until it's taut, and that creates a little V shape. And then on the outside of the end of the V, I'm going to use a little tiny stitch to tack it down. And that way it keeps that V shape in place. And that is a fly stitch. Now you can use a fly stitch on its own by itself, or you can use it with other fly stitches or other stitches to make different kinds of shapes and patterns. I'm just simply going to go down this line vertically, creating fly stitches. So I came up from the back at point 1. I go down exactly opposite of it on point 2. And then I'm going to come up at point 3 a little bit down from those two points to create my V. And then I'm going to tack that end of that little V down. And I'm going to do another V or fly stitch. Come up through the back, go down at a point directly opposite of that, leave a loop, and then come up through the back a little ways down from the first 2 points, and then tack the point of that V down. Now this set of fly stitches was done vertically, but you can also do it horizontally. And I'm going to show you that in just a bit. I'm going to use that horizontal line, or that perpendicular line, to do a horizontal one. And I'm actually coming up through the end of that last point. I'm coming back up through that same hole, and then I'm going across from it, down, leave a loop, and then I'm bringing my needle up on that line. That's my third point. It's going to be along that line, equidistant between the first two points I had. And then I'm just going to keep going like that until I'm finished doing my stitches. Pull it, create that V, and then of course tack the end of that V down. So next up, we're going to use our fly stitch to fill in a leaf. So I've already drawn out this leaf. Typically you might want to outline the leaf using one of the embroidery stitches that's good for outlining. So like a back stitch or a stem stitch or a split stitch, even a chain stitch. And then you would use the fly stitch to fill that in. So I'm starting off at the tip of the leaf, and I'm actually just making a straight stitch down just at the very tip of it. And then I'm going to come up on each side of that straight stitch. So I'm going to come up on the left side first, and then go over to the right side, push my needle down through, create my loop, and then come out at a point down from those 2 points, come up through the fabric, and create my little V. And you're really not even going to be able to see it because it's really tightly up against that first stitch. And so you can make your fly leaf filling very tightly woven together or stitched together, but you can, which I'm going to do for just a couple more stitches, and then I'm going to make it more widely spaced out, and you can see how it gives it the look of veins on the leaf. So coming up through the back again, down on the other side, and then coming up at my point in the middle, but slightly down. Okay, through the loop and pull it tight, and then you can tack it down. Okay, so those were my tighter together stitches, and this next one is going to be further apart. From here on out, they're going to be further apart from each other, not right up against each other. So, and I'm just doing the same thing, just a little bit further apart. And of course the V is widening because the leaf is widening. So it's going to be a wider distance between the first 2 points of your fly leaf or your fly stitch. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I get to the bottom of the leaf. And I have one more stitch I need to do, or one more fly leaf. And come up at the V. Okay, tack that down. Okay, and we're gonna leave a little bit for the stem. And we're gonna do just one little back stitch to create the stem of the leaf. So up from the back and then backwards to the end of the leaf, to the end of that V. And there we go. That is the fly leaf stitch. Now we're going to do the fishbone stitch, which happens to be my favorite stitch. This stitch does not need to be outlined. I just drew the leaf as a guideline, but you can outline it with one of the outlining stitches if you want to. I've come up from the back at the very tip of the leaf, and now I'm going about 1/3 down that vertical line that I'm holding horizontally, and I'm creating just this straight stitch. Now on the left side of that stitch, I'm actually going to come up on the side of it using the lines I've drawn as my guide. And then I'm going to push my needle down through on the at the tip of that straight stitch. And in fact, you can actually put it down through that same hole if you want to. Okay, a little thread there. Okay, so I've put it down at the end of that straight stitch, and now I'm coming back up on the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the end of that straight stitch and then back down through the same hole. And this creates a very tightly embroidered stitch. So it's going to fill in that entire area. You, of course, could do it so that it is a looser stitch, but I really like it that because it's very tight, like a satin stitch is. Okay, so I came up on the left side and I went down. This time I didn't go through the same hole. I went a little bit below it. And you're going to keep doing that from here on out. So I came up through the back on the right side, and now I'm going to go back down just the tiniest bit underneath the place I had just I had gone down through for the left-hand stitch. If you can understand anything I just said, you get a prize. Okay, so basically you're just going back and forth, much like you did with the fly stitch, but just a little bit different. You're not having to tack any V's down, but you're still creating a V-type shape. You're just alternating the sides back and forth. And you're going to keep doing this until you get down and the entire leaf will be filled. This stitch, just like a satin stitch, is best done with a full floss, meaning it has all 6 of the threads within that floss. So you don't want to detach them and have just 4 threads or 2 threads because it'll take a lot more thread to fill in what you're trying to fill in. So it's best to do with again, the full 6 threads of your embroidery floss that you're using. And this is a really great stitch because you can make it any size you want. It can be a very tiny leaf. I could stop right here and use that as my leaf. Or I could go bigger, but I can also go even smaller than this. Thanks for watching and happy sewing.